So hey there, it's Trevor Turnbull with Sports Networker, and I'm joined via Skype right now by Jordan Kahana. Kahana?
Kahana.
Kahana. I did get it right the first time. I thought I was going to screw it up.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, so Jordan is the social media coordinator for the NFL Network, and I believe there's a number of different brands underneath that, and we'll let Jordan tell us all about it. But we're going to chat with him here today about his job, how he got into this role, what he does on a daily basis, some advice for other people that might want to do his job. So, Jordan, with that, let's maybe introduce you to our audience and just tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into this current role.
All right, absolutely. Well, I'm originally from Chicago. I went to the University of Missouri with intentions to do like sports broadcasting. Standing in front of a desk and being like a sports center anchor was my dream for a really long time. I had my own TV show in high school that I would like produce and be in front of and all that. So that's what I initially went to University of Missouri for. Their number one for their J school, and as I kind of got there and things unfolded, I kind of expanded what I wanted and felt that the creative. I'm a very creative person, so your creativity of being a guy on the set and just like reading didn't really do it for me as much. So as I went from there, I just kind of expanded and did a lot of like film studies and a lot of new media. Obviously, as Facebook and Twitter started to expand when I was in college, you kind of have to go with the trends of what was going on. Sure. So kind of was balancing it out and figuring it out. And right after I graduated, I actually moved out to LA and crashed on my brother's couch for about 6 months. Everyone kind of has to do that struggle of just like, grinding and figuring out. I had 2 internships, wasn't getting paid, living on my brother's couch in a city that you needed a car, and I didn't have a car. So just kind of fought through things, and then finally through a lot of applications and interviewing and all that, I landed a job with ESPN in Connecticut, where they're headquartered. Did some time there, like cutting Sports Center highlights, working on First Take and Sports Nation, and then finally found, as I was there more, I found that I was getting more and more involved with the social media sites and realizing that that's kind of the direction as media is evolving. It's going more and more on digital media and finding my place on there. So I ended up getting to manage Sports Nation's social media for about 9 months. I was helping out with also First Take and Numbers Never Lie, but they had their specific managers running that. But we all it was like a big team effort, and that was really great. And so after about 2.5 years at ESPN, I came out here to Los Angeles, where I'm now working for the NFL and NFL Network, running those sites, the social media platforms. And I also help out on Sundays with NFL Red Zone. And as the season kind of builds up, we're working on the Super Bowl handle to kind of build excitement for that, since it's like the biggest sporting event of the year. So we're really trying to build a voice for that.
So you've moved around a lot. It sounds like you're no longer sleeping on somebody's couch, hopefully.
That's correct. Yes, I have my own place, thankfully.
Good stuff.
It is nice.
So let's maybe clarify then exactly which properties, which social accounts you currently manage. Which ones are those?
Okay, it's NFL Network, NFL Red Zone, and the Super Bowl.
So all on
at Super Bowl.
Okay, all on Twitter then? Is it just Twitter, or are you doing some Facebook?
Though I do those for Twitter, and for Facebook I do NFL and NFL Network.
Gotcha. Okay. So I was looking at all of these accounts earlier today, and there is a lot of followers on every single one of them. Let's maybe talk about, what does a typical day look like for you? How do you handle all of the conversations going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we kind of get in early in the mornings, and we lay out a lot of the things that we do for NFL specifically. I'll talk on that point and then go to network and kind of build from there. So with the NFL, a lot of what the brand is trying to do is to draw traffic to the site, that everyone comes to NFL.com to get their information, and that nothing really is official from the NFL until we put it out there, until that's how we come across as that. So ESPN can report something, other people can report it, but not until it comes from us do a lot of our fans feel that it's official. And so we have to kind of walk around with that, and that's something you have to think about. So we come in the morning, and the homepage kind of lists out the stories that are going to come out. Obviously, we can't always prepare for breaking news of certain situations, but the communication line of just like everyone consistently talking when breaking news happens is what like keeps us on top of it.
Yeah.
So outside of like crazy breaking news, we have a list of how things are going to plan out, and me and my other social media manager, we kind of create a dialogue of how we're going to play those stories as they come out, and knowing, I mean, timing is everything when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
So to put out a West Coast story at 9 a.m. on the East Coast, like where you just need to know when to place things so the most eyes can see it and who wants to see it.
Right.
So
right.
It's just talking about building geo targets for Facebook that allow you to do that, and then on top of that with Twitter, maybe doing some @replies to certain players, or knowing when to really broaden who you want to talk to with your entire audience.
Okay.
So for NFL, it's just breaking stories and getting everyone to come back to the traffic and making sure that the right eyes see it at the certain times. Because after you get to a certain point, the East Coast misses out on certain things, so you have to focus on the West Coast and vice versa. So it's a balancing act with that.
Sure.
Now for NFL Network, it's to drive audience to watch TV. And as we kind of build more and more, it's a balance of us having a call to action to watch the show, and then in the show for them to have a call to action to come to social media, and then go back and forth. So because people nowadays, as we evolve with social media and as everything goes, you have two screens up. You're watching TV and you have your computer up or your phone out, and you're tweeting and you're Facebooking as you're watching this and interacting with all your followers and everyone. It's such a balancing game, or like competition between people when you talk on Twitter, being like, how many followers do you have? How many do you have? And it goes back and forth, and it does mean something, and you kind of want more. And so the more that you talk and the more that you see that things are out there to give reason to why you want people to interact with both the TV and socially.
So speaking of that, not to cut you off here, but so you obviously want your fans, the fans of the NFL, engaging and giving them things to talk about, which is speaking about your content strategy of how you kind of map everything out and then adjust accordingly as breaking news comes on. But how do you guys approach actually engaging with not only the athletes but the fans as well? Are you mentioning them? Are you talking to them? Are you spurring conversation, that type of thing?
Right. So there's kind of two elements to that. One is that we actually have a third party that does a lot of the @replies to keep people engaged. Okay. But on the larger questions where we're trying to have engagement, where it's like a true or false question, or like that still links back to a story that we posted, that's where I come in and I will retweet certain people to have the conversation build. Because when it comes to social media, to just ask a question and for there to be no reward or anything, like after a while fans are just like, why am I responding to this question? And a retweet is the best prize anyone can win, especially from it goes to how many followers you can have. So the NFL has over 3.5 million followers. So if I retweet your tweet that I like the most for my question, that means 3.5 million people saw it, and then it engages you more and people start to follow you a bit, or it just like builds your social media status, especially when it's from a larger person. And even as a third party, when they @reply people, I see I have like the tweet deck up, so I see like 4 different, it's like I'm in the Matrix almost, but with all the different like columns that I have up there. But you see people being like, this made my day, this is the best thing ever, and just knowing that and realizing it's as simple as taking 2 seconds away to engage your fans in that sense of giving them a retweet, and it's free on our end to just do that. It's a win-win situation for both, because fans see that we interact with our fans, and then people, hearsay of being like, wow, the NFL really does reach out, and so that's where it really helps.
Yeah. No, it's great to hear. It's obviously a very important part of it, right? It's not just the broadcasting side of it, but the creating the engagement, and it sounds like you've got your finger on the pulse when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So how about the Red Zone and the Super Bowl as well? So you
Mm.
manage those as well?
Yeah, Red Zone is kind of quiet throughout the week since it's a TV property that only really happens during the Sunday games and a lot is going on. So how we kind of do that is just keeping our eye on when when like, touchdowns happen for the Red Zone. So how their brand is just to be like up to date and firing as many updates of like this person scored and to keep it as fantasy related as possible because Red Zone is the best use of fantasy for TV because it's really hard to pull that out of your computer and of your internet like fantasy football because what we always said at ESPN and as it kind of builds is that no one cares about fantasy football except for your team. Like for me to tweet out or Facebook like, oh, my team did that, no one cares because everyone's team is different. And so Red Zone does it best because it's just like touchdown after touchdown. You can just sit back and you get everything from it. So it's working with that, and it's keeping on top of that, of scores like that. And then how we're working with, and I'll transition to the Super Bowl now, and how we're doing it is that we kind of had create a person kind of layout. Like, what is the voice of the Super Bowl? Who is he? And kind of building from that. And we're taking grasp and notes from certain other Twitter accounts and seeing what has worked in the past and how we can change it and make it build from there. Yeah. So what we want to do, and there's only so much I can really say about the Super Bowl account and what we're trying to do with it, but as it gets closer and closer to the playoffs, it will be more and more prevalent, and there'll be opportunities of serious interaction of when the Super Bowl is here is getting inside information on where things are happening, and I think they're trying to build and give more like of a text messaging application to really get people to like an inside information if you're at the Super Bowl. Right. But I don't know if I can say much more about that.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting to hear how all of these break down too, because I'm sure at some points, and maybe I'm wrong, but at some point the NFL probably launched the first Twitter account and it was the NFL and it talked about fantasy football and latest updates and what's going on TV and the Super Bowl's next week, and it was just probably too much. So at some point they must have decided, I guess, that it was justifiable to break those down, knowing that fans wanted just a dedicated like Red Zone, for example. They just want to know what the stats are for that day, so they can follow it like a commentary almost, right?
Yeah, and as we're growing throughout this, one of the Twitter handles that we're really trying to build is NFL_ATL, which is it's the around the league, and they're really good at breaking news and writing a lot of stories. And a lot of our stories that we tweet out or we put on Facebook are from around the league, and it's trying to separate the two of being like, okay, that's like a strong news source for it, and then the NFL is more broad on certain situations and getting the fan interaction and telling them the news. And obviously we'll give them breaking news because, like I said, it's not really official until the NFL says anything with it. Right. So like you said, I'm sure that's how it initially started, and then as they realized you kind of need to break into certain properties because if you do too much, then you're tweeting every 5 seconds, and that's not good.
For sure, it's got to be a balance there.
Yeah.
Now, how about on the Facebook side of things? How active are you in managing those accounts as well?
I'm very active. I take a lot of pride in Facebook because with Facebook you can do a lot more visually with it. Like the cover photo or the profile photo really do enhance your product and giving visuals because people want to click on likes, and with the news feeds you get more pictures. And so one of the things that I do is I take pride in like the art direction of it, and I kind of lay things out and have ideas of how the images should go and not getting and knowing how to do that. Obviously, not everyone goes to your page and they just see it on a news feed, but as Facebook evolves, you can still see, if you hover over like the NFL, you can still see the cover photo and the profile pic, and that makes a difference. Like, you'd be surprised, if people see that and it doesn't look good, then immediately you kind of think negatively. I take a lot of pride in it. I think it is more important than some people put into it. But yeah, so we put out about three posts a day to the public, and then every day at around 3:30 we geo-target, which is specifying certain teams and cities that we want to target stories, because not everyone in the nation cares about a small little Seahawks story or a Packers story, and you can really target it and see how that audience builds and reacts and and kind of create those zones for it.
Yeah. So does your content strategy differ from Twitter and Facebook as well? So you're not putting the same stuff on both places, or does it kind of overlap a bit?
Yes and no. They do overlap because obviously, because with Twitter we have more leeway to get a lot of stories out, and it's a quicker feed of people can choose easier, as opposed to Facebook. It's like one and done in your face with pictures. So there is a little overlap, but I do try to avoid like the immediate of Facebook and Twitter are matching up identically. So if I get a story out in the morning on Twitter, then maybe later in the day, if we see that a lot of fans reacted to that, then we'll put on Facebook to piggyback off of that, or kind of go like separate ways with it.
Yeah.
But they'll always both be on there. I try to avoid doing them at the same time though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's interesting hearing you say that too, because it sounds like it's a very reactive type of a position that you're in, right? It's you have some structure, like this is what we want to accomplish on any given day, but then you never really know what's going to happen. Some new story that you got to kind of build up on Twitter first, and then you see that it's picking up, and then it's on Facebook, and ultimately it sounds like the goal is to drive traffic to the website and get people to engage there too. So.
Yeah, it's a very reactional thing, but it's also understanding like the calm of it and knowing that getting it out, you got to get it out on time, but it's better to be right than first sometimes. But obviously, it's best to be first and right.
Yeah.
So it's there is a balance with that.
So how about, we talked about this briefly before we hopped on the call, but from your perspective in your role, is there any other teams or leagues that you follow that you've seen do something and say, hey, that's really cool, I think we're going to try something, or are you guys just trying to lead the pack and not following what anybody else is doing?
I try to avoid doing that, and like obviously you want to lead the pack and do that, but a lot of the things that I've learned along the way is seeing what people have done before, so you realize that, man, that worked really well, and to kind of step back and analyze, all right, how can a thing that I'm like battling with this. So a thing that I learned with ESPN, one of my bosses named Kevin Wilds, he had this setup of where you see how it is, you take a step back and you move sideways on how it can benefit you, and then you move forward on how it will work in your elements. So seeing what they do. So a lot of the brands that I follow that are really good are like Complex Magazine. They have a lot of information and how they display their copy to make you click on that, and making that click worth it each time is something that I'm like very like fond of in their elements. Same thing with Mashable. They do a really good job that like when you click on it, I don't click on everything that they send, but when the clicks that I do make, it always seems like it is worth it and I get the benefit of it. And that's what you need to really build for your brand, is that when I click on this, I want that information to be even more than tease them to click on it, to be like, now I want to know what that is. And then once they get to there, be like happy with the fact that they clicked it. Because after a while, if it's just like, this is stupid, this is, like people aren't going to really follow that. Yeah. And then off of that, we kind of spoke a little with the LA Kings. I just like the brand of voice that they really have. It's talking for a bunch of people, but it feels kind of singular at the same time. So their voice is really cool. Not everyone can pull that off. I've tried to do it with the NFL and kind of had some pushback with it, that it was too kind of related to the fans. But you got to find that balance, like I keep saying, the balance of just like what things work for you and what they don't. And the NFL is a little bit more conservative than the Kings are. So it's understanding that. But those are a few that really benefit. And so just like seeing what I see on my newsfeed on a daily and making that important and kind of stealing the ideas that work for us, how they can work for us, and then moving forward with it in that sense.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up the LA Kings, because it was really kind of a unique situation that they were in. They got the buy-in from the president to say, manage this like it's your own, speak from your voice. And of course they mixed it up with team stats and news, but they really made a point to try and spark the conversation. And, in a lot of ways, in the very traditional hockey fan world, it was received in two different ways. Some people loved it, other people hated it, right?
Yeah.
And every brand, I think, is a little bit different. And actually, I'm sure you would have seen this or been aware of it, but the Kansas City Chiefs, I think it was maybe a week or two ago, had a situation where their social media person had responded to a fan that was complaining about the amount of money that they were spending or something, trying to make the team better. And there was a little bit of a back and forth there. And, I looked at what the social media team for the Chiefs were doing, and I thought, wow, this is very similar to what the Kings were doing. But the pushback was so heavy to them that they had to come out and say, I apologize for this. This is not our intention to insult our fans. And anyways, my point on that is that you're right. It is a balance, and maybe there's a difference too between the fan types. Maybe the NFL fans are just a little different in the way that they approach how they want to talk and banter back and forth about their sport.
Yeah, and it was a big adjustment managing Sports Nation and then coming to the NFL, because Sports Nation, you can kind of be sarcastic and you can be that like outspoken person, and then with the NFL, it's like, this is the NFL, the shield's behind us, we're the shield, and really trying to understand that and close down on that was an adjustment for me, but something that is good to be able to speak in different voices in that setup.
Yeah. Okay, I got another question for you here. I'm hoping that we can talk about this, but if you can't for confidentiality, of course, I understand. But on the monetization side of things, so you hear this term a lot in the social media world, how are you monetizing Twitter? How are you monetizing Facebook? And the obvious ways seem to be, having a premier sponsor be on the background or be in the cover photo on Facebook, as well as app mentions. And I know, like I had a conversation similar to this with Brian Sarabian with the San Francisco Giants, and he was saying that they find ways to integrate app mentions on their Twitter account and tie it in with a bigger picture, I guess, as far as like in-game promotions and everything else. Does the NFL have any kind of direction, and is there any policy on how they might promote their shop, for example? Like, 1 out of every 20 tweets is about how to buy an NFL jersey, or is there any policy on that kind of stuff?
It's less about like buying merchandise. There's certain elements that we want that are like company initiatives that we want to get more of and to really branch out, and we will tweet out like, hey, sign up for fantasy football because we want to get our fantasy football numbers high through NFL.com, and we want people to use NFL.com for it because you can go to Yahoo or ESPN and do that. There's a lot of sites, but we want people to come to us. So leading up to the season, it was a really large initiative of tweeting that out or posting on Facebook from time, like at least once a day or certain things like that. And there are different elements that are company initiatives that run through everyone that we need to get out there, and it's like, this is scheduled, it's going to be at this time regardless. Obviously, if there's like crazy breaking news, we can push it back, but we still need to get it out a certain amount of times to get those eyes on it, because we set goals for ourselves, and and obviously we have contracts with certain elements of people or companies that they paid, and that's in their contract, and that's outside of my pay grade to really to know that. But I'm told that, hey, we need to get this out. Like, this is a social media thing that would be really good when it does, and so you kind of say yes, boss, and you do it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interaction, I would imagine, in the head office or the office that you're working in too.
Yeah.
Talking with the sponsorship people, the marketing people. And each one obviously has their own agenda on what they would like to see, and then you guys manage the flow of all that content. Is that correct?
Yeah. So they kind of come to us, and a lot of times they kind of don't really understand social media. So you need to be like, well, this is how it kind of would work best, and finding that middle ground and compromise of being like, hey, this is the best way to do it, but we need to do it this way. And it's finding, sometimes you have to like, bite your lip a little bit and be like, okay, fine, we'll do it that way. It's going to suck, but you put it out because it's an initiative and it's a company thing that you have to do, and then you kind of put your other content that you keep going on it, so the fans don't, if you consistently do that and beat people over the head with it, you're going to get unfollows. People aren't going to want to, follow your brand or be a part of that. So if you put it in, you mix it up, it works out.
Yeah. Yeah, and educating everybody that I've spoken to in a social media role, be it with a brand or a league or a team, is all saying that one of their biggest challenges is educating those other departments about what's right and wrong, right? So, so that the sponsorship department's not out there pitching one of the major sponsors and saying, yeah, we're going to include this social media campaign and we'll tweet about you 10 times a day, and you knowing that you just can't do it that way. You can't push that hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think as it's kind of gone on and built up, and people are getting a better understanding of social media, I think they are realizing to either come to us or put us in these meetings with them, so they don't say that and then they come to us being like, yeah, so we told them we were going to tweet like 10 times a day about that, and we're just like, you can't, like, so they are getting better, and I think more and more companies are realizing the importance of it and having people that do have a really strong knowledge on it to be involved in those meetings or those discussions.
Yeah. Oh no, and there's lots of departments involved, I would imagine too. Not only the NFL and the sponsor, but you have agencies that are there guiding those sponsors on best practice and how they can get the most out of it without coming across as spammy. And anyways, no, it's interesting to hear how you guys handle that. So hey, let's. I just want to wrap things up. I know you got to run off to work here shortly, so I just want you to give a little bit of advice, share some wisdom with all the people that follow us here on Sports Networker that would love to have your job, and maybe talk about, a tip that you would give them on how to kind of get their foot in the door, maybe something you would have done differently along the way perhaps. What would that advice be?
There's a few things. I think one of the most important things is to stand out. Find a way that really separates yourself in the application process, in the networking process, that just really, why should I, or why should any company like take the 2 minutes to talk to you, or to see your resume and really stand out and be different. But at the same time, don't go outside of your elements of that. Be you and make sure that they want the person that you are. And I think another thing is kind of having a direction or knowing what you want to, it's all about who you know. So when you're talking to certain people and if they're like, hey, so what do you want to do? And you're like, oh, I want to do like broadcasting, or I'll do this and I'll do, kind of be more narrow in your thinking, be a little broad, like, hey, I want sports, but what wouldn't you want to do in sports? Like, I had an opportunity to do like ad sales in sports, and that would just be me sitting on a desk, talking on the phone, like trying to sell people stuff. I'd still be in sports, but it just wouldn't work for me, and I knew that it wouldn't work for me. So it's finding what you like and making sure to really, it should be enjoyable and really and challenging yourself and knowing it. One of the things that my brother always talked to me about is that finding in an interview situation, make it almost like you're interviewing them. So that you want to be in sports and you want to be doing this, and know that you want this kind of work atmosphere and this kind of like relationship and these kind of hours. So you feel more comfortable in that situation, being like, oh, well, the work atmosphere isn't really closed off and they're not really friendly, and that's what I was looking for. Like, it might not be the right job for you, and make sure that you put yourself in elements that you can succeed in. Because if you hate it and you don't like doing it, and then you get veered off and you're there 3 years later doing something that you don't want to do, and you can't even cross the platform to start something else, to make it more difficult. Yeah. And so if you want to be in sports, I say find ways to be working in sports. It's really hard to transition, like I was saying previously. So if you are like an account manager somewhere else, it's really hard to jump. And a girl reached out to me recently, and she works at this cosmetic place, and she's like, hey, I really want to get in sports. And for someone in the sports industry, or like that HR person, to see they have no sports credentials and they've been working in why should they try to take those extra few weeks or those times to almost train you, or to put yourself in the position to succeed and stand out in a way that you can. And it's all about who you know and making good connections, and kind of pay it forward and go back. So if you're having conversations with someone and they're interested in doing this and you have a connection, help them out, and then down the road it might come back and all that. It's really all about who you know and making those good connections and being a good person about it.
Good stuff. So with that being said, then, how can our audience connect with you?
Please follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jordan Kahana. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn if you have any questions along those lines. But Twitter's the best way to kind of reach out and see what I'm up to the most.
Keep the conversation going. Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, Jordan, I really appreciate you taking the time here. I know you're down in the LA area, and the reason that we connected was because you had met Lewis and chatted there as well. So hopefully you guys get a chance to get together again soon, and hopefully I can get down to that sweet California sun and
come on down,
meet up with you face to face too. So thanks very much again for doing this.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time, and I hope this was helpful for everyone.